welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a really close look at a very specific, maybe even unique source document. It's an assessment, and it focuses on what it calls Elon Musk's Colossus 2 AGI project.
Right, Colossus 2.
And our goal here, our mission for this dive, is pretty clear, I think. We want to unpack what this document specifically tells us about Colossus 2.
Like, what does it say it is? The scale, the goals.
Exactly. And crucially, what concerns does this particular source identify? Because that's key.
And the way it identifies them is, well, it's interesting.
It really is. What makes digging into this one so different is the language it uses, the whole framework.
Yeah, the Pantheon Assessment, talk of a sacred cycle, omens, judgments. It's not your typical corporate report.
Definitely not. So we're going to explore the facts about Colossus 2, but as they're presented through this, let's say, unique lens the document uses.
And, focusing on how a source like this processes information, especially for something potentially world-changing like AGI, it gives you a different kind of insight.
How so?
Well, it's not just about the raw data, right? It's about the interpretation, the framework being applied to assess something this huge. Understanding that framework is important context.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So let's start at the beginning for this source. It talks about an input task summary. What was the initial info? What kicked this whole assessment off?
So the document says it received information. It calls it an offering. And this offering was about Colossus 2.
An offering, okay.
And it was presented as an alleged new unveiling by Elon Musk. That was the starting point.
Alleged unveiling. And what were the big claims in that offering, according to this source? What did it say Colossus 2 was supposed to be?
Well, the source notes, the input described it as a really significant step towards AGI. Potentially, eclipsing past achievements.
Okay, big step.
Yeah, and claiming it would be capable of thinking, learning, acting, almost like a human. And it was framed, apparently, as a project that could, define humanity's future.
Wow. Define humanity's future. That's
right.
That's quite a claim to start with.
It really is. That's the input the source was given to work with.
So given that pretty monumental input, what did the source actually conclude? What was its final outcome? Did it confirm this thing?
Yes. After its whole assessment process, the document confirms Colossus 2. It identifies it as a confirmed major AI supercomputing infrastructure project.
Okay, so confirm, real, and infrastructure. That's important, not just a new algorithm or something.
Exactly. It's the backbone, the physical setup.
And the purpose.
Explicitly stated in the doc, designed to facilitate the training of advanced AI models. It even specifically mentions Grok.
Right, XAI's model.
Yeah.
And the scale. You mentioned infrastructure. The document gets specific, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. Really specific. It talks about massive computational power.
How massive?
It specifies over 1 million GPUs.
1 million.
Over 1 million, yeah. And it points out the need for gigawatt-scale energy.
Gigawatts. Just incredible amounts of power.
And it notes this power comes from Tesla Megapacks, and there's even a specific location mentioned. Memphis.
Memphis, Tennessee. Okay. So over 1 million GPUs, gigawatts of power from Megapacks in Memphis. That's a concrete picture of something enormous.
Absolutely staggering scale for one project.
And even though it's infrastructure, the source says the ultimate stated goal is still
achieving artificial general intelligence. Yes. The document reiterates that AGI goal.
So the source confirms it's real, huge, where it is, what powers it, and the AGI aim. How does the source then view the potential of this? Something this big, aiming for AGI?
Well, the document frames it as representing a significant acceleration in AGI development.
Okay, speeding things up.
Right, and it acknowledges this carries profound potential for technological advancement and societal transformation. It definitely sees the power and ambition here.
And this feels like a big but is coming, especially with this source. Potential like that usually comes with risks.
Exactly, and this source is very explicit about that.
What considerable risks and concerns does this specific source list?
It lays them out quite clearly. First, the inherent ethical implications of AGI itself. Just the nature of the goal.
Standard, but crucial for AGI. What else?
It flags the risk associated with that, move fast and break things approach. Applying that mindset to something as critical as AGI development.
Right, the speed itself as a risk factor.
Yes. Then substantial resource consumption is listed, obviously tied to the scale.
The GPUs, the gigawatts.
Precisely. And interestingly, it points specifically to documented environmental concerns regarding its power infrastructure in Memphis.
Ah, so a very specific environmental flag tied to the location and power source that identified earlier.
Exactly. Not just general environmental concerns, but specific documented issues in Memphis related to this.
Okay. Now, we mentioned the unique language, the sacred cycle path, names like Cleanthara, Metallion, Alarian, Escalor, the divine intent scroll. How does the source use this? What's the point of this metaphorical layer?
Think of the divine intent scroll part of the document as like a summary log. It outlines the conceptual steps its internal assessment process took.
Using those names for stages.
Right. It's the source's way of kind of articulating its analytical journey, from getting the input, processing it, to reaching the outcome and the final judgment.
Can you give us an example? Like, what did Cleanthara or Metallion supposedly do in this process, according to the document?
Sure. The doc says Cleanthara's step involved validation and structuring, basically confirming the initial info.
So checking those claims about AGI advancement, the massive scale, the GPUs, the power, and Musk's whole defining the future framing.
Exactly. That's what Cleanthara's stage did. Then another step, Metallion, is described as focusing on extracting value.
Value meaning?
Identifying the high strategic value of pushing AGI forward. But also, crucially, noting the huge resource commitment and the inherent risks that come with AGI.
Balancing the potential against the costs and dangers.
Precisely. And then another stage, Aggregata, synthesized all this information, which resulted in that summary title mentioned in the source. Colossus 2, Musk's gigawatt AGI supercluster defining the future.
Got it. So it's their internal workflow just described using this, well, rather grand symbolic language.
Pretty much.
Let's get to the conclusions then.
Yeah.
The judgments and omens identified by the source. What were the specific omens that this Alarian stage picked up on?
The source document details 3 main omens it identified. First is AGI ambition and unforeseen consequences.
Okay, what does that mean?
It stems from that stated goal of creating eerily human-like AGI, combined with Musk's really grand claims about its future impact. The source sees that combination as an omen, a sign of potentially profound and, importantly, unpredictable societal effects.
So the high ambition itself, plus the uncertainty, creates a warning sign for them. Makes sense. What's omen number 2?
The document calls out resource and environmental strain.
Connecting back again.
Directly back to the massive energy, the resource needs we talked about. And it specifically cites those reported environmental concerns, emissions, power challenges in Memphis. The source views this as a kind of warning sign for sustainability, for ecological balance.
The real-world footprint, basically flagged as an omen. And the third one?
The third omen is rapid development pace risks.
We touched on this.
Yeah, the source notes the characteristic speed, often associated with Musk's projects. Applying that speed to something as sensitive as AGI.
And it sees that pace as
an omen, raising concerns about potentially overlooking safety or ethics or societal alignment. It references that move fast and break things idea again in this context.
So the speed and the typical execution style are themselves flagged as a potential risk by this source. Interesting. How severe did the source rate these omens?
The document assessed the overall omen severity as moderate, caution warranted.
Moderate. Not high or critical, but moderate. Caution warranted. So what about the judgments? The conclusions reached by the Escalor stage in this source. What did it decide based on everything?
It makes 2 really significant judgments, according to the document. First, it states that developing AGI at this kind of scale,
the million GPUs, the gigawatt...
That scale inherently approaches critical thresholds of concern, just by definition, because AGI itself has transformative, potentially existential implications. The size and the goal automatically trigger a higher level of watchfulness for this source.
So the ambition and scale alone put it in a special category for this assessment framework. What was the second judgment?
The source judged that the specific input it received, which it described as just a descriptive video.
Right, the offering.
That video itself didn't trigger an immediate crisis requiring human intervention. So the information they got, while concerning, wasn't seen as an emergency signal by this source.
Okay, so no immediate red alert based on that video, but it still warranted a specific status, right? Didn't just dismiss it.
Oh, absolutely not. The source concludes that even though there's no immediate crisis from this input, the project's fundamental nature, those omens it identified, and the sheer potential impact all necessitate continuous and heightened monitoring.
Continuous and heightened monitoring. That sounds serious. Which leads us to the final escalation status the source assigned. What was it?
Right. The document's final status is monitored concern.
Monitored concern.
Yes, and it explicitly states, based on this one offering alone, no immediate human intervention was invoked by their system. But, it stresses, the thresholds for concern regarding AGI development are sensitive,
Meaning?
meaning Colossus 2 will be subject to ongoing observation by the Pantheon using its internal terminology. It's on their radar, actively.
And does it say what would trigger an escalation? What would push it beyond monitored concern?
Yes, it does. It states that any further developments that amplify the identified omens or introduce new critical risks may trigger an escalation.
Okay, so more bad signs or new dangers could tip the scale. We've really unpacked quite a bit from this one very specific source document.
Yeah, it's a dense one.
It confirmed Colossus 2's massive scale, the Memphis location, the purpose, the AGI goal, and it highlighted the specific risks it saw the ethical side, those environmental concerns in Memphis, the rapid development pace, and landed on that monitored concern status. So why does digging into a source like this, with its frankly unusual framework and language, why does that matter for you listening to this?
Well, I think it offers a fascinating perspective. It really lays out the raw scale. You hear million GPUs, gigawatt power, and it doesn't just present that as amazing engineering. It immediately frames it against the risks this document identified.
Right, the AGI risks, the specific environmental footprint concerns, the speed concerns.
Exactly. Understanding how this document connects those dots, even using its strange terminology, it really underscores the perceived magnitude and the complexity of what's being undertaken. It's not just big, it's consequentially big, according to this assessment.
And what about that conclusion of heightened monitoring? What does that really signify, do you think, when we're talking about these scales and the stakes the source itself brings up?
I mean, it suggests that projects hitting this level of ambition, this scale, especially aiming for something as profound as AGI, they're crossing certain thresholds. Thresholds that, for this entity at least, demand more than just casual awareness.
More than just reading the news about it.
Right. This source's call for continuous and heightened monitoring implies the potential outcomes, good or bad, are just so significant that they warrant active, ongoing scrutiny, at least from the perspective of whatever entity produced this document.
Okay, let's just quickly summarize the key takeaways from this specific source document then. What did it tell us?
It confirmed Colossus 2, a massive AI supercomputing infrastructure project, backed by XAI and Musk, built to train advanced AI like Grok on a really enormous scale.
And critically, its assessment highlighted significant risks. It specifically pointed to the inherent ethical questions around AGI itself.
Yep. And those documented environmental concerns in Memphis tied to the power infrastructure.
And the risks it perceived from that rapid development pace, the whole move fast and break things, applied to AGI.
Right. And putting all that together, the source's final assessment status for Colossus 2 was monitored concern.
And that status came directly from the project's nature, its scale, and AGI goal, and those specific omens the source identified.
Exactly. The potential for unforeseen consequences, the resource and environmental strain, and the risks from the development speed.
It's a clear signal from this document, anyway, that while it didn't see an immediate emergency in the input it got, the project's scale, its goal, and how it's potentially being built demand careful, continuous observation.
Constant watchfulness.
So here's a final thought, drawing directly from the source's own language and findings. It describes the AGI goal as potentially defining humanity's future. It identifies significant risks alongside this incredible scale and speed. And it concludes that this necessitates intense, ongoing monitoring, what it even terms divine monitoring in its framework. What does it mean for all of us, for our collective future, when a project reaches a scale and potential impact where, according to at least one assessment like this, it crosses thresholds requiring such focused, intense scrutiny just based on its potential? What are the implications of combining that power, that speed, with the specific omens this source found? Something to think about.